We're doing the last day on establishing a daily practice. And so today we're going to do the kind of the leftovers, the things that we haven't touched previously from the practice, the daily practice on Shakyamuni Buddha, which is the 4 immeasurables. We'll touch it very briefly. And then we have the Lhundrup with I will explain a little bit about analytical and concentration meditation, which is still waiting from a couple of sessions ago. And we will go through the 3 scopes and the Lhundrup realizations or the stages of the path that we go through, and then we can recognize them in the prayers that we do, or in such as the foundation of all good qualities. But also in the other Lhundrup prayers, you will see the same stages. Yeah, that is the main thing that I have. Then if we have time enough, we can do something with the breakout groups, and we finish with a little meditation on the 4 immeasurables. And of course, if there are any questions related to this session or related to other sessions, then there will be time for you to ask them. Okay. So maybe we start with setting up a good motivation. The fact that you're coming to this session means already that you have a good motivation, but we can help our mind to go through all the steps which are needed in order to get to a really genuine bodhicitta motivation, in order to help our mind to be trained in going through these steps. And also in order to get a good foundation, to not do sometimes we do some spiritual bypassing in generating bodhicitta, I just want to work for the benefit of all sentient beings, but we're not really looking if the foundation for that is present in our mind. So make yourself comfortable. And bring your mind to your body, spending a couple of minutes adjusting your posture. Whereby the main aspect is that we have a straight back, which is relaxed at the same time. Which creates an alertness in our mind, or which supports alertness in our mind. And at the same time, mindfulness, the mind resting on the object. So we straighten the back with our bones. We place the bones, the vertebrae, one on top of the other. And then we relax all the muscles. And we let the mind move through the body. Checking the tension in each part of the body. Relaxing where it is needed. And then when we feel that the mind starts to relax, when we can observe that there are less disturbances in the mind, we can focus on our breath, either by observing the rising and falling of our abdomen, or by observing the sensations at our nostrils, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And then we remember how precious this human rebirth is and how death can come at any time. And at the time of death, a higher rebirth comes only from virtue, and a lower rebirth comes from non-virtue. That's a fact. And think how often and how easily we create non-virtue, and how powerful those non-virtues are. With non-virtue, there is often the motivation and the dedication present, which is much less present when we create virtuous actions. And that makes non-virtue more powerful. And now I'm reciting Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who says, make the decision to give up being lazy and clinging to this life, and instead immediately put full effort into practicing Dharma. And he calls this give up stretching the legs, which means give up clinging to this life and being too lazy to practice Dharma. Instead, think of impermanence, which is the nature of this life. And then remember the definition of samsara and reflect on how samsara is only suffering. Contemplate the 3 types of suffering of samsara, and in particularly the suffering of change. Look at how easily we get attracted and attached to samsaric pleasures, which are only in the nature of suffering, by wrongly believing that they are real happiness. And because of this, we have been reincarnated in samsara continuously up till now, totally under the control of karma and delusions. Our body and mind are in the nature of suffering all the time. Make the determination right now to give up looking at samsara and its pleasures as real happiness, and instead work for liberation. So think, and this is again, I recite Lama Supreme Rinpoche, this is giving up entering samsara, which means giving up thinking that samsara and samsaric pleasures are good and then clinging to them. Instead, we realize samsara to be suffering, because in reality, it is only suffering. Then think how self-cherishing is the cause of all our problems and the root of all suffering. The I that we are cherishing is in actuality not there, because it is not truly existent. The I in actuality that we hold on to, that we cherish, doesn't exist. So therefore it's very foolish and harmful to cherish this I. Now think how cherishing others brings every happiness. Every single one of the numberless sentient beings, no matter how they look or what they do, is the originator of all our numberless past, present, and future happiness. And make the decision that from now on, you will cast away your self-cherishing as though it were a deadly poison, and instead only cherish and serve others. And then we can generate bodhicitta by thinking, in my life, there is nothing to do except cherishing other sentient beings, working to free them from all the sufferings and their causes, and bring them to enlightenment by myself alone. Therefore, I must achieve full enlightenment. So when we set up the bodhicitta motivation, I hope that you recognize the 3 scopes that we went through. And that we need to go through the first 2 in order to generate a bodhicitta motivation, which is really based on a good foundation, a solid foundation in ourselves. Once your mind is trained in generating this bodhicitta, you can maybe with 1 sentence recall the lower scope motivation. Then with another sentence, you recall the middling scope motivation. And then you maybe want to put more energy into the great scope motivation. But we have to make sure that the basis is good, right? That we don't jump too quickly. So going back to the practice, so after having set up the bodhicitta, so we start with setting up the bodhicitta motivation, similarly as what we just did. And then we take refuge in the guru. The guru is Buddha, the guru is Dharma, the guru is Sangha, etc. And after that, we take refuge in generate bodhicitta. I'm going very quickly through it, and then I will end up on page 19. Thank you, Michael. So then we purify the place and we invoke all the holy beings to come to the space in front of us. We bless, multiply, and present our offerings. And then with the power of truth, we make sure that the offerings can be received by the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. After having made the offerings, we prostrate to the holy beings in front of us with our body, speech, and mind. And each of these items you can do as extensive as you want, as extensive as your time allows you to do. And so then we go into the actual practice with the visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha. With the visualization in front of us, we generate the motivation for taking refuge in the Buddha and his teachings. And after that, we do the refuge practice. So last time we went extensively through that refuge practice, taking refuge in each object of refuge individually, and all these objects of refuge are one with Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. And when we go through that, every time we purify all our negativities that we have created in relation to that particular object of refuge, and then we increase the qualities related to that object of refuge. Then, having done that, we come under the guidance of that particular object of refuge. All right, that's where we were. And then we are at page 19, where there are the four immeasurables. So it says, contemplating the four immeasurables as a support for generating bodhicitta. And there are different ways of practicing the four immeasurables. This is a very extensive way. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide or were to achieve. This sentence comes back in all practices, whether we do that, for instance, on the level of the Hinayana practitioner, or whether we do that on the level of the Mahayana practitioner. In the Hinayana, it says, how wonderful if this would happen. How wonderful if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity. In the Mahayana, we say, I'm going to make that happen. Right? I have the responsibility to make that happen. In the Hinayana, we do not take that responsibility, or they do not take that responsibility. So in order to remind us of bodhicitta motivation, we think, I will make that happen. And in order to do that, I need to have the blessings of my guru. I need to have the blessings of my Buddha. I need to have the blessings of the Guru Buddha. So we can go quickly through them and look at the meaning. So we start with thinking how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity, free from attachment and hatred, discriminating some beings as close and others as distant. And so what prevents us from doing that is are the 8 worldly concerns. Right? We are constantly obsessed with experiencing the pleasures of samsara and with making sure that with trying to separate ourselves from the sufferings of samsara, or with that what we do not like. So we lack the equanimity to be fine with whatever arises, pleasure or displeasure, things that we like, things that we do not like. We immediately react with our disturbing emotions of attachment and aversion. So this is what we would like to counteract. Having an equanimity there is the basis for generating bodhicitta, right? It is our liking for the ones that we love, the ones who benefit us, the ones that we experience benefit of. It is our liking for that, and that makes that we have attachment arising in relation to them. It is the disliking for those who say unpleasant things to us, who criticize us, who hurt us, who harm us, that creates the aversion in our mind. And it is the attachment and the aversion that creates all the suffering. Right? First of all, in the present moment, from attachment and aversion, more disturbing emotions arise. First of all, it disturbs the mind. So the mind is not clear anymore. It disturbs the mind and it generates many more other delusions, but also disturbing thoughts. They are all based on attachment and aversion. So once we have equanimity, we are free of that. And then when we are free of that, we can develop loving kindness and compassion for each and every sentient being. Not only those who are close to us, not only those that we like, not only our friends, our family, but we can extend that to the whole world, to all sentient beings, even including those who have harmed us. This is what we, in order to really expand the mind, this is what we need to do. So the four immeasurables give us a good basis for that, or help us to generate that. So having that knowledge about what equanimity means, we meditate on it. How wonderful if all sentient beings were to abide in that equanimity, free of attachment and hatred. First of all, they would have a calm, clear mind. So they would not be disturbed. And then second, they would not create the causes of suffering, nor would they create suffering in the present moment for themselves and for others. And so we contemplate that, and then we say, may that actually happen, may they abide in equanimity. And then coming from the bodhicitta motivation, we say, I will cause them to abide in equanimity. And even at this stage, if we don't know how to do that, that's not an issue. We can say, I will find out. I don't know yet how to do this, but I will find out. I want to make that my responsibility. And then we ask the Guru, please, Guru Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. On the basis of that, we say how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to achieve Buddhahood. May they achieve Buddhahood. So there are also versions, and they maybe you see them more often, which says how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to have happiness and the causes for happiness. Lama Zopa Rinpoche has changed that into may they achieve Buddhahood. Happiness, when we think about happiness, often that refers to temporary happiness, the happiness of samsara. May they have pleasure. But Lama Zopa says what sentient beings need is enlightenment. We sometimes say, I do not get what I need, and one time Lama Zopa, he said, it was a Light of the Path retreat. He said, what sentient? He said, people come to me and they say, I'm not getting what I need. I need this, I need this, I need love, and then he said, no, what sentient beings need is enlightenment. That is the only thing they really need. So when we say, may they achieve Buddhahood, we think this is perfect happiness. And that perfect happiness is based on the happiness of liberation. And that happiness is based on samsaric pleasure. Yes, that is included, right? But it is not separate from that. It is not just samsaric pleasure. So may they achieve Buddhahood. I myself will cause them to achieve Buddhahood. Please, Guru Buddha, bless me to be able to do that. And when you go through this verse, you can visualize that you send light to all sentient beings, coming from your merit, coming from your happiness, coming from all your good fortune. And that light carries all that merit and good fortune with it, giving it to all sentient beings, giving them the happiness that they are looking for, giving them the happiness of Buddhahood, but I will also include liberation and even the pleasures of samsara. And you visualize that they receive that. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from suffering and its causes. Please, Guru Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. So the definition of compassion is wishing someone to be free from suffering and its causes, or wishing them to be free of suffering, which includes the causes. When we recite that verse, we can again visualize that we remove the suffering from sentient beings, and we can imagine that we pull that towards us. Right? We let it dissolve into us, and we can use the visualization that we normally use in the Tonglang practice by thinking that that suffering comes towards us in the form of black smoke, and that it hits us in the heart in a self-cherishing mind, and that we absorb it all on behalf of all sentient beings. And once we have done that, then we generate immeasurable joy, which says how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never separated from the happiness of higher rebirth and liberation. And so may they never be separated from these. I will cause them never to be separated from these. Please, Guru Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. So this verse refers to the happiness that arises when we have removed the disturbing emotions from our mind. The quality of that happiness is very different from the quality of the pleasures that from the happiness of the pleasures that we experience at the moment, right? When we experience pleasure, we call that happiness. Then when we speak about the happiness of liberation, we somehow maybe think that's same, maybe just more. But the quality is very, very, very different. When we experience pleasure now, there is always a disturbance in our mind, right? And then that comes with, we don't just experience pleasure and then it is gone, and then we just abide in the satisfaction of having experienced the pleasure. Right? When pleasure comes, often it is just followed by attachment. And then we go for something, or we get into an activity, or we have more thoughts arising in the mind. The joy, which is the happiness of liberation, is a happiness that comes from freedom from attachment and aversion, a freedom from the disturbing emotions. So there is this spacious feeling in the mind. There is this lack of disturbances. There is this, it cannot even arise, right? When we have removed the disturbing emotions, they cannot arise anymore at all. They're just not in our mind. Those who suffer from a busy mind, which maybe has negative thoughts in it and some heaviness and some darkness, and we say, wouldn't that be great to be free of that, right? But then when there's pleasure in the mind, we say, no, I don't really want to be free of that. I still like that, So but then we have to remind ourselves the happiness that comes from being really liberated from both attachment and aversion is much, 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 much bigger, totally different quality than the happiness that we experience at this moment. So this is the contemplation that we do. Within the Hinayana practice, we just say, how wonderful if it were to be like that. And in the Mahayana, we say, I'm going to do that. And so then we prepare ourselves for generating bodhicitta. After that, in the practice, and then we go very quick, there is the bodhicitta motivation, which we did. I think we did this before. Remember if we did this last time. But we have read this before. Again, we generate bodhicitta. Again, going through, this is especially the great scope. Remembering that sentient beings suffer in the same way as that we suffer. And then remembering that they are the source of all our past, present, and future happiness. We set up the bodhicitta motivation, then we go to the 7 limb prayers that we extensively explained, and then the mandala offering. And under the mandala offering is the request for the blessings, and we have done that as well. And then we get to the Lhundrup. Right, this is a 7 limb prayer. and the mandala offering. And this is the request. We did that after we did the mandala offering. And then the foundation of all good qualities. And here we can pause, but I sent you another sheet, Michael, just before the session. If you could put that up here. I don't know if you received that. Yes, wonderful. And you remove that whole top that you have on the screen. Anyway, if you can't, it's fine too. So when we go through the foundation of all good qualities, what we are doing is we're going actually through all the steps of the Lhundrup, reminding us what our path is to eventually achieve our goal of enlightenment. Doing that creates a lot of imprints with respect to the path that we need to go. This is very important that we do that we remember ourselves. This is the path that we go. This is the path that we go. I always have the feeling it creates already a pathway in our way of thinking. It creates a pathway in our mind that becomes easier and easier and easier to walk, you know. And so then even when things are difficult for us, we can remember because we have the habit to think along that pathway. And so to make it very clear what we are doing in the Lhundrup, and for you to remember, oh yeah, this is the first scope, that is the practices for the small scope, this is the middle scope, this is the great scope, this is the preliminaries that I need to do. It becomes very, very, very clear in your mind. Right? So what we start with in the Lhundrup is relying on a fully qualified virtuous friend. And when we read through the Lhundrup, there are many reasons why it is important to have a virtuous friend that we can rely upon. And it is also described what kind of qualities we would like our virtuous friend to have, to make it really a friend that we can rely upon when things become difficult, right? This is when we can see what kind of, if we have friends, we can see in difficult times what kind of friends they are, right? Good friends are there for us. Not such a good friends, they are like, oh no, I'm not really into this. Lama Zopa Rinpoche is very strong about thinking about Guru devotion, practicing Guru devotion, and practicing that at the beginning of the path. If we look into other traditions, like I think the Kagyu and the Nima tradition, they first go through the preliminaries, and then relying on the virtuous friend comes in. So they have the Guru devotion a little bit later in the stages of the path. Lama Zopa is very strong. No, you have to do it from the beginning. So we always start foundation of all good qualities, or the other Lhundrup prayers that we do always start with a prayer on, or a verse on Guru devotion. Then we need to somehow stimulate ourselves or inspire ourselves to extract the essence of a precious human rebirth. So we need to identify that we have a perfect human rebirth. And so we go through the, 8 endowments and 10 richnesses. And we know the 8 freedoms and the 10 richnesses. And we think about them. We think about how rare it is to have a human rebirth, how rare it is to have a precious human rebirth. And we can also think about that in terms of an example. So we use all the ways that are described in the Lhundrup to think about perfect human rebirth. This is a preliminary. This is not yet the stages of the path. This is not yet the 3 scopes. right? We're not there yet. But once we have identified perfect human rebirth, then we can go to training in the path of a person of small scope. Or we call it the path shared with a small scope. I'll explain that later. Let's first go into what it actually is. So there are 4 meditations or 4 topics that we go through, that we contemplate, which is death and impermanence. Then remembering that after death, there's going to be either a lower rebirth or a higher rebirth. There is no middle way there, right? You either go to the suffering realms or you go to the more happy realms. And so by remembering death and impermanence and the fact that a lower rebirth could easily happen, we try to generate a motivation that is going to strive for a good future rebirth. We're going to say that I'm going to die for sure. I might fall into the lower realms. I don't want that. I want to make sure that at least I'm going to have a higher rebirth. I'm going to strive to create the causes for a higher rebirth. So then the next question is, how do I do that? What are the means for a happy rebirth? That is taking refuge, and that is developing faith in cause and effect. And so developing faith in cause and effect talks about karma, the features of karma, how karma works, and we contemplate that to generate faith. In order to generate the causes for a happy rebirth, we need to create virtuous actions, right? Abstaining from non-virtue consciously is already a virtuous action. But then doing the opposite of non-virtue is even better. You know, this is what we eventually strive for, creating virtuous actions. Virtuous actions means that we do actions for the benefit of others. Virtuous actions means that we already have to have some knowledge where we let go of that self-cherishing, self-grasping mind that is just possessed with my happiness alone. All right, we need to have the wisdom mind that says, no, that's not going to create any happiness for me. I need to do the opposite. Instead of holding on to things, I need to practice giving. Instead of harming when I don't like something, I need to practice abstaining from that and practicing ethics. Instead of giving up when things become difficult, I need to try to keep going. Instead of being very disturbed when somebody does something or says something bad to me, I need to practice patience, right? That seems to be so different than normal human beings do, right? They do the opposite. And so then we're going to say, oh, I'm going to do the opposite of what everybody else does. If we understand how our mind is influenced by the mind of others and by the way other people think, and if we know how strong our need for belonging is, and if we realize how easily we can give up what is important for us in order to have the feeling of belonging, right? Then we can see, wow, practicing virtue is not that easy, because we need to overcome all that. When I practice giving in a situation that my friends would not do that, or most of society would not do that, they're going to call me bad things, right? Oh, why would you do that? That's you're a loser. You know, they might even call you bad things because you're doing a good action. Especially at the moment that mindset becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Morality is not what is practiced anymore in our time. Right? We have attachment, has become the refuge of many beings, right? You need to follow your attachment in order to be successful. And if you don't do that, you're a loser. You don't get it, right? And being confronted with that can create a lot of unhappiness in the mind, because we feel excluded, we feel not understood, we feel that we lacking connection with people. That creates a lot of suffering. So we need to overcome that suffering in ourselves by seeing that what we are doing is actually fantastic. It's just that the majority of people might not see that anymore. And so having friends who can support us in these practices is therefore very, very important. All right. So that's the training in the past shared with people from, or practitioners from the small scope. The goal is to create the causes for a good future rebirth. If we want to continue practicing Dharma, we need to create the causes for a good future rebirth. Right? So it is called the path shared with a small scope, because even as great scope practitioners, which we might think that we are, and even as a middle scope practitioner, we need to do the practices of the small scope as well. We have that in common with the small scope. It is the foundation of the middle and the great scope, right? It is not separate from that. If we would say, what is the great scope? We say it is only these last practices starting with bodhicitta. But in actuality, the whole path is the great scope. We need to do the whole thing. But if you say, I just want to go for a future rebirth, then you only have to do the small scope. All other practitioners have to do the whole thing. All right, no skipping. If we forget to do this, if we forget to do the practices of the small scope, we might end up in the lower realms. And once we end up there, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to get out. And we might do a lot of virtue and a lot of giving, but somehow we don't keep our ethics. We end up as an animal having a fantastic life. We might be reborn somewhere near a monastery, or we might become the pet of a Dharma practitioner, and we hear the Dharma, but we cannot do anything with it. Right? We don't want to end up there. We also do not want to we also do not want to end up in a human rebirth, because for instance, we practice ethics, and so we create the causes for a human rebirth. But then we didn't practice enough generosity, and so we have no money. We have no means to practice the Dharma. We have to work. We have to wash dishes or do something else in order to make some money to survive. If that is the only thing we can do, make money in order to survive, there is no time to practice the Dharma. There is also no resources to be able to practice the Dharma. So we need to create all the causes in order to have a good future rebirth. Good meaning that we have the resources as well. All right, then training in the past shared with the middle scope. So what makes that we start the practices of the middle scope is the determination that we want to be free of samsara. And in order to get to that place, we realize, actually, even if we have a good human rebirth, or even if we have the rebirth of a god, that life is going to be end one day. And in that life, I might not have all the conditions to practice properly. So when that life is finished, I might go to the lower realms anyway, right? So and even when I have a good human rebirth, even when I have a rebirth of a god in which I can practice the Dharma, I will still experience a lot of suffering. And so we contemplate these sufferings. We contemplate the fact that even if that rebirth is not going to last forever, and then we're not sure where we're going to go. And so then in the basis of that, we generate the motivation to actually completely get out of samsara. So we start yearning for liberation. And so how we go onto the path of liberation is that we contemplate the 12 links of interdependent arising. And we're going to practice them in the reverse order, right? This is how we achieve liberation. We know all the links, and we know how when we have no awareness, samsara naturally takes place, and we're going to try to counteract, and we can counteract on many of these links. We can counteract them, right? You can find teachings on that on the internet. So it's very good to know how we get into samsara, you know, and because it gives us the information. It also makes that when you feel like, oh, the striving for liberation is so difficult, you know, it's such a difficult, and then you think about, I prefer to do this, but then you know, this is more samsara, this is more suffering. Why would I go there? Right? Hold back. Even when practicing Dharma is difficult and can cause suffering, that suffering is at least the suffering that is going to lead eventually to freedom from all that suffering. While when I engage in that, what might look as a pleasure in samsara will always lead to suffering, and not just the suffering immediately, but again and again and again. Right? So the better we understand the 12 links, the more we can pull ourselves out of that, the more we can practice the opposite of engaging in samsara. And so in general, we can say that training of the path shared with the middle scope who wants to achieve liberation from, or who wants to gain liberation from samsara, we train in the 3 higher trainings: the training of ethics, the training of concentration, and the training of wisdom. Right? And as great scope practitioners, we share that. We engage in all these trainings. We just have a little bit more to do than just that. So then training in the great scope stages of the path, which is the gateway of the Mahayana. So in order to enter the Mahayana path, we need to develop the mind that wishes to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Only when we have generated that mind, what they call uncontrived, which means effortlessly 24 hours a day, that then we enter onto the Mahayana path, the path of accumulation. So in order to generate that mind that needs to become very, very strong, right? First, we need to generate that mind contrived in a way that we have to put effort. So to do that, we need to know the benefits of bodhicitta. And so in all the motivations that we have set up, and also in the prayers, there are the benefits of bodhicitta. Like all suffering comes from just cherishing oneself, while all the happiness comes from cherishing others. And then in order to develop bodhicitta, we need to go through first developing equanimity. And then on the basis of that, we go through the 7-fold cause and effect instruction. Or we go through exchanging self for others. These are 2 methods that we have in order to develop bodhicitta. Often they are combined into 11 points, which, you know, holds all the points of these 2 instructions together. And so then we can generate bodhicitta like that. And then developing bodhicitta, we also do that by training our mind in the first 4 perfections. So then training in the great scope practice. Once we have done that training, and then we start engaging in the bodhisattva deeds, means how are we going to benefit sentient beings? And then we engage in the trainings of the 2 last perfections, which are concentration and wisdom, and the uncommon path of the Vajrayana, the tantric path. That is how we benefit sentient beings. I'm looking because when we do the first 4 perfections, we of course also benefit sentient beings. But these trainings, they help us to accumulate all the merit that we need in order to be able to walk the path. Well, the last 2 perfections, they are more about the perfections, the accumulation of wisdom. And the accumulation of wisdom is what eventually is gonna make that we engage in helping sentient beings. Right? The Buddha said that the way that he helps sentient beings is by teaching the Dharma, and not just the Dharma, but by teaching the nature of reality. Because once we understand the nature of reality, we are free of suffering. Right? The Buddha is motivated by a mind that wishes all sentient beings to be free of suffering. What is that brings the freedom of suffering? It is the mind realizing emptiness. So all the teachings of the Buddha are for that reason, that eventually we will understand the teachings on emptiness and then bring them to our practice and then realize that. So I think this is why it is mentioned in training in the Bodhisattva deeds. All right. Any questions so far? Yes, Barbara.
Thank you for your teachings, Venerable. This series has been fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I don't understand the 7-fold cause and effect. I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay. So 7 cause, and now I have to go to my memory. So in order to generate bodhicitta, we need to get to the mind that says, I want to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, right? I will do that. This is the number 7. So 7 cause and effect means that there are 6 causes and 1 effect, which eventually leads to generating bodhicitta, or which is the generation of bodhicitta. So the effect is that you get to the mind that says, I'm going to do this, right? This has 6 causes, which are causes from each other. The first one is recognizing that all sentient beings have been a mother, right? Recognizing that we have a connection with all sentient beings. If we want to generate bodhicitta, we say we are willing to do anything that is needed in order to help another sentient being to develop their mind, right? For me, wanting to help someone, I need to see them as kind. I need to see them as attractive. And then in Buddhism, they say, well, who was the most kind person in your life? Our mother, right? In the West, maybe not all our mothers. We cannot experience that. But if we think about a mother who is willing to give everything, willing to give her life in order to help the child to get everything it needs in order to develop itself, that type of kindness. We remember that all sentient beings have given that at a certain point in time to us. So seeing them all as our mother, then remembering their kindness, then on the basis of that, developing loving kindness for them, then developing compassion for them, then developing, you know these 7, I'm sure you have done them.
I do know those 7. I just didn't realize that they were called the 7-fold cause and effect. But no, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good. And so when we do exchanging self and others, then we also remember the kindness of others, right? But not just as our mothers, we also see them as our fathers, as our friends, as the strangers, as the people who provide us with our daily needs. We remember the kindness in that way of others. But it is about seeing the kindness of others so that we feel we want to repay that kindness. All right. Any more questions? Yes, Barbara.
I'm not even really quite sure how to ask this. What part, I will use the one, may all beings reach Buddhahood. May that be so. What part does karma play though? Do you know what I mean? Their karma.
That's there, right?
Right. So do you understand what I'm asking? I guess I can wish that.
I can wish that, and I can say I will do that. So sentient beings will have to take care of that themselves, right? They also have to do something from their side. It is not that they don't have to do anything and then we're going to do the whole thing.
Because I get confused with I will cause them to be able to do that.
Yes.
Which overrides their karma.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. I will cause them to do that is that you, from your side, you develop your whole mind so that you have the capacity to give them what they need, but you can only do that when they are ready for that. Right. And so you can say, I will stay around that long as needed, as long as it's needed to help them all. But in order for them to get there, they first have to purify their karma. Right. But we never say that. Oh, I'm here enlightened, but you first need to purify your karma before I can do something. We can maybe do, when we develop a mind, we can maybe do things in order to help ripen certain karma, in order to, for instance, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, what he's doing, he's building all these holy objects all over the world, because he believes that he is convinced that when we see holy objects, something happens in our mind, some imprints that are there, they start to ripen, right? So that is his bodhisattva deeds. That is one of his bodhisattva deeds, helping us to ripen our karma. So he says, I will do this even when it's me alone. I will take responsibility for all that. But it doesn't mean that you take on their suffering and gonna go through their karma in order to, because we can't do that. The Buddha also said, I cannot purify your karma. I cannot take on your suffering and then help you in that way to relieve it. I cannot, but what I can do is I can teach you the Dharma. Right? So when I say, I will make that happen, is that I will teach the Dharma as long as it's needed. Right? From my side, there is no wavering, there is no stopping. I will keep doing what I'm doing, but there is one part that you need to do, and I will be here, but you need to do it. Does that help?
That helped a lot. Yes. Good. Thank you. Good. Thank you.
Sometimes we are raised with the thought that if we just do the right things, we can alleviate the suffering of others, right? Especially when we have the people pleaser mind. You don't have that. Fantastic. You don't have that problem. Good. So what I wanted to do, if there are no more questions at this point, just go book The Awakening Mind by Geshe Tashi. I believe Basil's Abbot. Is that a teaching that is coming up? All right, so I want to go through why we spoke about in order to do our practice, we do both analytical meditation and concentration meditation. And when we go through the Lhundrup, eventually everything is focused on, if we want to be free of suffering, that we realize emptiness. So how are these two related to each other? Why do we need both analytical meditation and concentration meditation in order to eventually be released from all the suffering, in order to realize emptiness. Yes, and then I explain a little bit more, because I think sometimes we think, oh, this analytical disturbs my mind. I don't like it so much, so I'll do the concentration, which is good, but there is always a but. If you need the whole context, then you can practice to make sure that it suits your mind, but also so that it is going to take you where you want to go. All right. So why do we need to meditate? Why do we need to go through the Lhundrup? Why do we need to develop the mind that wants to strive for liberation and enlightenment? So if we look into the mind and how the mind works, then we can see that we are ignorant beings in terms of we cannot see the nature of reality. We cannot see the nature of the ultimate reality. We cannot see the nature of conventional reality. Instead, what we perceive is totally opposite as to how reality exists in actuality. We perceive everything to be more permanent, more concrete, more independent than it exists in actuality. And the cause for that wrong perception, for this veil of ignorance, that prevents us from seeing reality as it is our self-grasping mind, the mind that holds the self to exist independently of anything else, as if it is an autonomous entity. Right, that I, we all know that I, especially when we emotionally, that pops up in our mind, and it appears as if it is standing in and of itself. When we are very emotionally, it even appears to exist independent of the body and the mind, right? It is outside of the body and the mind. That is how we perceive it. That is totally opposite as how it exists in actuality. So we cannot see the reality. We need to know that we cannot see reality as it is. That is one thing. Then in each moment of mind, we experience feelings, right? Feelings is what we call an omnipresent factor. It arises in every moment of mind. Because we hold on to that self. When feelings arise, when pleasant feelings arise, we react with grasping at that pleasure. We react with attachment. Attachment follows. We want more. We want to hold on to it. We do not want to be separated from it. And when unpleasant feelings arise, we react with aversion. We want to be separated from these feelings. So we do not allow our feelings just to come and go. We constantly interfering, either by following it and trying to hold on to it, or by trying to separate from it. This is an emotional reaction. We are not in control over that reaction. We are often not even aware of that reaction. It happens on a very subtle level. And this is actually the cause of all our suffering. Right? That is another thing. So we have the self-grasping mind, then we have the reactiveness to feelings. Then we all have the wish. That reactiveness comes from the fact that we all wish to be happy and we all wish to be free of suffering. In itself, there is nothing wrong with that wish. That is in our nature. I think that wish is also the thing that is going to take us to enlightenment, right? When we combine that wish with a wisdom mind and with a compassionate mind, it's going to take us to enlightenment. So that wish is fine, But at the moment, due to our obscurations, the only happiness we know is the pleasures of the six senses. So we grasp at that. If I say I want to be happy, I can only strive for what I know, right? So I go for the pleasures of samsara because I do not know the pleasure or the happiness of liberation. It's not a pleasure. I do not know the happiness of liberation. So when I think I want to be happy, I strive for the pleasures of samsara. Pleasures of samsara, the quality of that, it is very short-term happiness, and it is dissatisfactory by nature. You know, it doesn't calm the mind. It makes the mind disturbed. And it also doesn't give us any freedom from suffering, you know. So we think if I have enough pleasure, which we call happiness, I will be free from suffering, right? Life has suffering, but also life has quite some good parts of it. And we think we normally just go for the good parts, right? We try to create the conditions that we only have the good parts, but we don't realize the good parts are in the nature of suffering as well. And so to see that, we need to look a little bit deeper and see that even when we experience goodness, there is this dissatisfaction underneath. This dissatisfaction is always part of it. You know, even if we have a very good life, there is a striving for better. We can always do better. We can always do more. So if we really want to become free of suffering, then we need to attain a happiness which is a happiness beyond the pleasures of samsara. And for this, we need to realize the nature of reality, which means we need to realize emptiness. So we need to remove that obscuration from our mind, right? That is what is obscuring us from seeing reality as it is. We need to remove that. And we can only remove that completely when we realize emptiness. In order to realize emptiness, we need to develop our mind, right? We know that. So we need to bring our mind in line with reality itself. How to say that? At the moment, the way that we find happiness is following this instinctive nature that we have, which is emotional, no? We feel like, yeah, I know how to do this, I know how to do this. Somehow we think or we believe we know how to find happiness, but at the other side, when we check, we know that we do not know how to find happiness. Right? If we realize the nature of reality, there are no more disturbing emotions, and happiness is part of our mind, right? Happiness arises naturally without any effort. So having a mind which is aligned with reality naturally experiences more happiness, is less delusional. Do you agree with that? When I have a mind which is not in line with reality, I have expectations which are not in line with reality. I'm grasping at something which is not in line with reality, and I can be sure that what I'm grasping at is not going to happen. Right? Or we can be sure when we look at the outside. When we do not realize death is coming, then when death comes, we are shocked. You know, my auntie was 84 and she was about to die. And she said to my mom, why me? Why me? She was totally shocked. I'm going to die. How is that possible? Right? Totally shocked. Because her mind is not in line with reality. When we think in line with reality, we do not generate expectations which are outside of reality, which is the thing that causes us so much suffering. We are not creating hopes, you know, maybe one day this most fantastic, beautiful man or woman is going to appear in my life and is going to make me perfectly happy. This is out of line with reality, right? So you can keep hoping till the cows are coming home, and you just create suffering while you are hoping, and it's not going to happen. Oh, then you're so disappointed. Then the disappointment brings you very down. So the mind goes up and down when our thinking is not aligned with reality. So the way that I see Lhundrup is that it creates a framework, an intellectual, a conceptual framework, which is in line with reality. If we would realize the nature of reality, whether that is ultimate reality or conventional reality, we see that things function in accordance with what is described in the Lhundrup. Although we cannot see that at the moment, by studying the Lhundrup, we familiarize our mind, our emotional mind, with conceptions which are in line with reality, which will make our mind less emotional, therefore less reactive, therefore less disturbed. Therefore, it will create a lot of space in our mind. We will not develop hopes which are based on nothing. We will not have expectations based on nothing. Our expectations will be in line with reality, right? I will expect death to come when I practice Lhundrup. And even when it comes early, you know, we say, why me? I can say, why not me? So this is what we do with the Lhundrup. We bring our mind more in line with reality, and therefore the disturbing emotions will naturally start to lessen. So how do we go through that? First, we need to know the concepts, right? We need to know the ideas. So we need to study. We need to listen, especially listening to the Dharma. So important, even I think more important than just reading books. Receiving the information through the ears does something very different to our system than when we just receive it through the eyes. And when I say receiving through the ears, I'm not talking about audiobooks. I'm talking about receiving teachings from realized lamas. You know, when we hear their voice, there is a resonation, there is a vibration in that, which might vibrate with our true nature. And when that starts to resonate, we will start to recognize easier. It will help to transform the mind easier than when that resonation is not there. And so we listen, we create a good understanding, then we discuss, do I really understand this? You know, because our mind is so influenced and programmed with pathways of thinking which are totally based on emotions, that we hear something and then we attach them to these pathways and then we think, oh, I got it, but we actually keep using our old pathways. So talking to other people about the Dharma and checking, did I really get this? Listening to each other, you can get so much more information about your own mind, which you might not be able to see because you're so familiar with that way of thinking. You think, you know, this is just how it is. But when you speak with others, you realize they think something very different. Maybe it's not the way I think it is. Right? That helps us to clarify. That helps us to eliminate any deep-seated beliefs, any deep-seated thoughts that are not in accordance with the reality. They need to be removed. Right? Discussion. Then you get at a certain point, the mind gets to a point that you think, no, I got it. You know, but that it becomes a knowing which is convinced. It is like that. And then it's time to meditate. And bring that realization deeper into your awareness. We want to transform our disturbing emotions, our reactiveness. You know, in the neurology, we talk about the limbic system and we talk about the reptilian brain, right? So here we have the cortex where we have the conscious thinking, which is maybe 5% of our brain. And then around the eyes, there is this limbic system, which is the emotional mind, which is the reactiveness on the day-to-day. And then deeper down is the reptilian mind, which is our fight and flight reaction. It is what we need when we are in danger. The moment we are functioning at the moment, due to all the fear that is created by all these crises that seem to appear, we are actually going down to the reptilian mind. We are functioning right there. If we want to transform it, and if we want to become less influenced by fear mongering that happens, if we want to keep in contact with our rational mind, we need to transform that whole system. Right? In order to do that, we have to go to deep states of mind. We have to really analyze. We have to apply the Lhundrup again and again and again to familiarize that it is not, that reality is not the way we perceive it. Everything that we perceive when there's fear in the mind, we can be sure it is not like that. Everything that we perceive when the disturbing emotions are in the mind, we can be sure reality is not like that. Right? But when they arise, these reactions arise, they appear as so real. Then we say, well, I don't want this Lhundrup, I know what is true, I can feel it, it's there. It appears so true. And so to counteract that, we really need a lot of familiarization. So we need time. We need time, and we have to go through it again and again and again and again. So then we go back to the meditations. Where we want to get out, where we want to get at eventually is that we realize emptiness, right? The nature of reality. Only that will help us to remove the disturbing emotions in a way that they will never come back again. So emptiness. Emptiness is the most subtle object to be realized. And in order to realize that, we need a very subtle mind. So we need to habituate our mind with more and more subtle objects to be able to see them. And we need to habituate our mind with more and more subtle levels of consciousness. Right? If we want to realize emptiness, we need both these qualities. True. So in order to be able to meditate on subtle objects, we need to make our mind flexible. Our mind is quite rigid, right? And it is used to coarse objects. And we believe that objects exist in the way they appear to us. If I want to realize that the object does not exist in the way it appears to me, I need to apply reasoning. I need to look at it from different sides. If it was really like that, then this would be the consequence, then this would be the consequence. It cannot be like that because of this and this reason. In order to use that reason in consciousness, I need movability, I need flexibility in the mind. Right? So this is a skill that we need in order to get eventually to that very subtle object. So this is analytical meditation, what we need in order to even get the object. Right? What happens to our mind when we try to do analytical meditation? The mind gets disturbed. And then we get disturbed and we feel like, oh my God, this disturbs even more my mind, so we don't like it so much. Also, when we have an emotional mind and we hold strongly onto inherent existence and also onto permanence, and we make the reality more concrete than it is, the mind doesn't like to move. The mind just focuses on the object and it is like that. I don't want any discussion. It is like that, right? But being open for discussion makes the mind more flexible. Yes, it can disturb the mind in the beginning, but if you can see that you might be disturbed because you cannot hold on to your rigidity, you might think, oh, maybe this disturbance is actually good because it's pulling me away from something that I want to keep hold on to, which in actuality is not true. So then maybe you can allow that to happen and see where that is gonna go. Right? That is one aspect of it. So then in terms of the mind, in order to realize emptiness, we need a very subtle mind. To make the mind more subtle, we develop the mind of calm abiding. Or we say we can engage in mindfulness practices, bringing the mind to the present moment, bringing the mind to the present moment. When the mind is in the present moment, disturbing emotions cannot arise, right? So the mind naturally calms down. When the mind calms down, we can see that although the core solutions are maybe gone, but there is still subtle movement. There is anxiety and laxity. So then we try to counteract that. And by doing that, we reach a place which is even more subtle. And then we can see there the disturbances. And this is how we make the mind more subtle, more subtle, more subtle, more subtle. Very nice place to be in, because there are no disturbing emotions arising. But it is just a subtle mind that cannot realize in and of itself reality. Right? Can be a very blissful mind, but it doesn't have the capacity to realize the nature of reality. To realize the nature of reality, we need to focus on reality. We need to focus on what we see, and then we need to apply the reasoning why what we see or what we perceive cannot be like that. So we need both minds. We need the mind that is very subtle. We need the mind that is flexible. And so they are actually constantly in a kind of dance with each other, right? When we focus very strongly, the mind can become more dull or passive. It's not doing anything. Then we bring in analytical meditation. Then we lose the concentration. The mind becomes more coarse. Then we have to refocus until the mind is calm. Then we apply again the analytical meditation. Then the mind starts moving again. And so we have to train our mind in both aspects in a way that we feel this is what is good for my mind. This is what my mind can handle. So bringing in the stillness, we help to refine the mind. We help the mind to become more subtle. Bringing in the analysis, we help if we have a lot of a very, very, very busy mind, we do not like analytical meditation. So we prefer to do the mindfulness meditation or the calm abiding meditations. That helps us to have some more space in the mind, to experience some more space in the mind. Which is good, because by doing that, we can see our disturbing emotions maybe better. Maybe they're not triggered so strongly, so they become more visible to us, and then we can do something about it. While when we have a lot of disturbances happening, they just come and there is no way that we can do anything about it. So then you say, oh, I prefer to do the mindfulness meditation, and you do that, which is good. But then when you start observing your disturbing emotions, I would say use your analytical meditation to understand your delusions, to understand the difference between the mind with delusions, the mind without delusions, to understand how delusions work and what the disadvantages are of the delusions. So while you look at them, you try to see. When, for instance, anger appears as my protector from suffering, right? And I believe in that. This is the only thing I have in order to protect myself from suffering. And so then anger easily can arise. When I can see that anger can never protect me from suffering and actually only gives me more suffering, when I can really see that, when it arises, I can say, I don't believe you. I'm not going to follow you. Yes, I'm disturbed. Yes, I don't like this. But when I'm going to react with anger, I'm just going to create much more trouble. For me, for others, I'm not going to do it. Right? So we can use the analytical meditation in order to apply an antidote to the emotions that arise. Right? Analytical meditation doesn't have to be just Lhundrup. Although anything about the disturbing emotions we will find in the Lhundrup. So we can use it like that. When you have a lot of disturbance in the mind, yes, you can do the mindfulness meditation, but contemplate reality also, you know. And if you feel like I can't do it in meditation, contemplate reality when you walk around, you know, go for a walk, when you're mowing the lawn, when you are going shopping, when you are contemplated. Because we can see Lhundrup. Lhundrup is a description of our daily life. We can see that everywhere. Right? When I go to the shopping center, I can contemplate the suffering of sentient beings, right? And following their attachment. I mean, what better place to be? You see how people do shopping, and you can see what kind of attachment must be there. Right? And I'm not talking about exactly what they're putting in their trolleys, but I'm talking about see the mind taking things from the shelf. You know, how do people shop? What do you see in their body language? And then when they go away, right, you have done this whole hunting in the supermarket, and then you go away, you should be happy, right? Because you follow what you like and you just get what you like. You should be happy. But look at the faces. When we leave the supermarket, you know, there is the next worry. Oh my gosh, now I have to put everything in my car, then I have to drive home. We never see this relief from, look what I all have. You know, isn't this amazing? A whole week of food. I did it again. We don't see that. Because that pleasure, what we think is pleasure, is not real pleasure. It's not real happiness. Sorry, it is pleasure. It's not real happiness. And I think anything that we gather comes with the burden of having it. Right? There is never this full relief of suffering, complete relief of suffering. It cannot be there. So use this kind of knowledge to observe. You know, then you can practice Lhundrup everywhere. You don't have to sit on your cushion. You just need to move your mind. You know, getting the mind out of the stuckness of holding on to. This is what Lhundrup also helps. All right. So then when we realize emptiness, we bring these two forces together, calm abiding and the fruit of analytical meditation, special insight. We bring them together. So we realize emptiness from the union of calm abiding and special insight. Right? We need to have both. And they have to be together. And the calm abiding needs to be so strong that it doesn't get disturbed by the special insight, by the analysis. So that is a mind that can be achieved, right? Even if you think, how would that be possible with my mind? Just know that it can be done, that we need practice, and it might take time, and it will take time, and that's fine, right? We are on the path, and as long as we're on the path and we're trying, we are fine. Doesn't have to be necessarily done in this life. We would like to, and maybe we have imprints in our mind, and maybe one day they're going to be triggered and the realizations are coming very quickly. We do not know, but the only thing that we can do is we can keep producing. We can keep putting in the effort in order to practice it. Then the result will come when it comes. You know, when we have enough merit, when we have done enough purification, the results will naturally come. So that's a little bit what I wanted to say. Oh, and then we can read through the foundation of all good qualities if you want, and then we can recognize the stages of the path. Okay, and I'm not going to name them. I'm just going to put that down. Okay, so let's read this together. The foundation, and then call to mind the stages of the path that you remember. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect Guru. Correctly following the Guru is the root of the path. By my clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon the Guru with great respect. When I have discovered that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is extremely difficult to find again, and is greatly meaningful, please bless me to unceasingly generate the mind, taking its essence day and night. This body and life are changing like a water bubble, remembering how quickly they perish and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. When I have found definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be conscientious in abandoning even the slightest collection of shortcomings and accomplishing all virtuous deeds. When I have recognized the shortcomings of samsaric perfections, there is no satisfaction in enjoying them. They are the door to all suffering, and they cannot be trusted. Please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Through my being led by this pure thought, with great remembrance, alertness, and conscientiousness, please bless me to make keeping the individual liberation vows, the root of the teachings, my essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother migratory beings. By my seeing this, please bless me to train in supreme bodhicitta, which bears the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta without familiarizing myself with the 3 types of morality, I cannot achieve enlightenment. By my seeing this well, please bless me to keep the vow of the sons of the victorious ones with fervent effort. By my having pacified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to quickly generate within my mind stream the unified path of calm, abiding, and special insight. When I have found definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be conscientious in abandoning even the slightest collection of shortcomings and in accomplishing all virtuous deeds. When I have recognized the shortcomings of samsaric perfections, there is no satisfaction in enjoying them. They are the door to all suffering, and they cannot be trusted. Please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Through my being led by this pure thought with great remembrance, alertness, we have already done this, no? I think we skipped a page. Fervent effort, we did that one. You go backwards. You have to go the other way up. Okay. Yes, there we are, page 25. We did this. A page up, you go the wrong way up. No, you go the wrong way. Yeah, you have to move up. Okay, here. Not sure what you're doing. Shall I try to do the screen share? You got a little bit lost. Page 25. Okay, here, stop. By my having specified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to quickly generate within my mind stream the unified path of karma binding and special insight. When I have become a suitable vessel by training in the common path, please bless me to immediately enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the fortunate beings, the supreme of all vehicles, the Vajrayana. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping my vows and samayas purely. When I have gained effortless conviction in this, please bless me to protect them even at the cost of my life. Then, when I have realized exactly the vital points of the two stages, the essence of the tantric sets, and am enjoying the yoga of the 4 sessions with effort, without being distracted by non-meditation objects, please bless me to accomplish these according to the teachings of the holy beings. Thus, may the virtuous friends who reveal the noble path and the spiritual practitioners who correctly accomplish it, having long life, please bless me to pacify completely the collections of outer and inner obstacles. In all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. And by completing the qualities of the grounds and path, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. So we messed that a little bit up. I hope that your common and your path in common with the small scope being and the middle scope being didn't get messed up too much. But read it again and again and try to find the points that we discussed. And maybe, Michael, you can put that page that I sent you with the stages to practice. You can put it on the with the material of the module so that everyone can have it. And so then we end up here in the practice where there is just a mantra recitation to be done. And when you do the recitation, you do that similar to the visualization, similar to what we have done when we did a refuge practice. But now you do it while reciting the mantra, reciting first white light to come from Shakyamuni Buddha, purifying all your negativities, all your obscurations, washing them out of you. And once you feel that that has been done, or once you have recited, for instance, one mala, then you visualize golden light coming towards you, giving you all the realizations of the stages of the path. And you can do that again for one mantra. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha. And so we can then visualize that we receive the qualities of Buddha's holy body, holy speech, and holy mind. And then at the end of the mantra recitation, we can think that the suffering of sentient beings are unbearable. And then we generate that bodhicitta. We can see the problems of all sentient beings, and we generate a strong wish to free all sentient beings from their suffering, from the causes of suffering. And we're going to do that by ourselves alone, not only the suffering of samsara, but we also free them from, we not only bring them the liberation from the suffering of samsara, but also the happiness of full enlightenment. And so the way we do that, can you go scroll a little bit down? So by having the determination, okay, that's it. Then we feel that the Buddha is very, very pleased by the wish that we're going to do that. And then we visualize that Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha dissolves into light, and that light dissolves into us, and we become one with Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's holy body, holy speech, and holy mind. And then in that, we can do a little bit more practice by visualizing that within our heart is a moon disk, and on that moon disk is the mantra Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha, We are in the aspect of the Buddha. We are in essence the Buddha. And the Buddha has that mantra on the moon disk at his heart, you know. So now we have that too. And then we can visualize that light beams visualize from my body, from the mantra. The mantra is turning around while I recite it. The light is going out from it in all directions. And from these beams of light radiate light. And it says then that we visualize that the Buddha comes to the crown of each of the numberless hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, human beings, asuras, and intermediate state beings. And while white light descends from the Buddha's holy body, it purifies all their defilements. Right? So this is the way we purify sentient beings. And then we visualize that the Buddha absorbs in each sentient beings and that they all become Buddha. And then we can think how wonderful it is that I have enlightened all sentient beings. And then we can do the dedication at the end. We maybe want to do some questions and answers. Questions first. So Michael, if you could put back up the screen. I don't see anyone. Michael, can you stop screen sharing? Yeah, thank you. Now I can see you again. Yeah, Barbara.
I have a question. That last meditation, it is my understanding that to become the Buddha, an empowerment needs to be given.
Yeah, with the Buddha, it's not like that.
Oh, what is it?
My understanding with Shakyamuni Buddha, it is not like that. You don't need an empowerment to visualize yourself as Shakyamuni Buddha.
Okay,
That's my understanding.
But the other deities, that is a requirement?
Yes.
But not Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay, thank you. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. There is no Shakyamuni Buddha empowerment. Right? I've never heard of that. I don't think it exists. And there would not be anyone who could give you that. I don't know. So I'm sorry about the Lamrimda. I got a little bit confused, Michael. I don't know what happened. I thought you were up and down was going, alternating. But I'm sure you can go through it and you can find all the points back. And so what you can do, I see your Kodo, I'll let you in a minute. When we do the Lamrim, you can, for instance, every day you stop at a different verse and you meditate a little bit longer on the topic related to that verse, right? So you deepen up your Lamrim meditation right there in the foundation of all good qualities. What you also can do is that you stay with one verse. So you read the whole prayer, but say you do the first verse and then you pause and you meditate on impermanence and death, or you meditate first on the Guru, on the kindness of the Guru, and you meditate on that for 1 month. And then only that, after that, you go to the next verse and then you deepen out the meditation on that verse. That is another way of doing it. Sometimes Lama Zopa gives practices to students and says, for so many months, you need to meditate on this and so many months on that. So you can insert that here in the foundation of all good qualities. Right? But you can use it to insert a Lamrim meditation. Right? You pause, you insert a Lamrim meditation, then you repeat the verse, what the Lamrim meditation was about, and then you continue the practice. Sorry. Okay, Kodo.
I have a question about the self-cherishing.
Yeah.
I've been feeling it sometimes, less often than 8 months ago. So that's really nice. But the other day I felt it, and I feel it here in the chest area, like the center of my body.
Yeah.
And it squeezes and it aches and it hurts and it just, it's that little kid going, "Wah." And now I recognize it and I kind of talk to it and say, "Oh, I know you. You're my self-cherishing I, and you want something right now, but," and then I just try to breathe with it. But do you have any suggestions, like, to when I'm in the middle of this stuff?
There are many suggestions. It depends. You know, sometimes this self-grasping mind, we can see that as a wound, right? And then in dependence on the self-grasping, the self-cherishing arises, which is that screaming kid. The screaming kid that tries, that says, I'm hurting so much, I don't want to feel this. I want something so that I don't feel it. So we need to address both. And sometimes what we are feeling is actually related to trauma that we have experienced in the past, right? So, for instance, having this very demanding voice inside us can be a result of not having received what you actually needed when you were little. And then you can discover, what was that? What is it actually that I want? What is it actually that I need? Yes, I have this tantrum throwing kid inside me, but what is it actually saying? Children can scream for a cookie, but they actually want to have a hug, right? Children are throwing tantrums, but they actually just need attention. They need to be touched in their very soft feelings. They're coming out like, but they need to be spoken to very, very softly. So you could say, I practice some self-compassion because I am suffering. I am suffering of not getting what I need. I am suffering of grasping at something that doesn't exist or that is not available. So I practice self-compassion, and I'm gonna be mindful of the feeling that I have inside. So I go to that feeling, and then I start to speak very kindly to myself. Often we are very harsh to these aspects in ourselves because it feels like suffering and we want to get rid of it. So we speak harsh, like, go away. But what we actually need to do is we need to reconnect with that aspect. And so we're going to speak kindly, softly, as if we are talking to a good friend who is in this state, right? And then we need to somehow reconnect, because these feelings of that screaming kid and also suffering, there is always a feeling of disconnection there. Sometimes it is disconnection from ourselves. Sometimes, we feel very alone. We feel very not understood. I'm the only one who's feeling this. Nobody understands what I feel. So when we can say you're not alone, either by saying there are all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they are there, or you're not alone because there's so many sentient beings that are suffering from the same thing as you are suffering from, or you're not alone because I'm here for you, or somehow that we feel we are not alone in that suffering, right? These three aspects are the kind of ingredients of self-compassion. When you do that, the suffering will disappear. You need, suffering is actually, I feel, disconnection. Pain is disconnection. So we need to reconnect. Compassion is what reconnects. Compassion is what connects. So how can we be compassionate? Compassionate says, I want you to be free of suffering. To say that, I need to know what a suffering is. What are you suffering from? To do that, I need to bring mindfulness there, right? Then how do I want you to be free of suffering? Not by beating you with a stick, by saying, what is going on, right? Tell me your story. sometimes it can be helpful that you actually put a listening ear towards that pain that you're feeling, and that you would start deeply listening with your ears. What is that? You know, then sometimes it starts to speak to you. Right? And so whether you calm that suffering by yeah, this is what I would suggest you. In Buddhism, it sometimes sounds a bit harsh, you know, you say, oh, this is all full of the self-cherishing mind, and, you know, give the suffering back to the self-cherishing mind. For me, that I find that very difficult to work with, because somehow I attach to self-cherishing blame and other kinds of emotional aspects. And then when I start blaming that, I feel I'm hurting myself even more. So I don't think that is meant like that in Buddhism, but due to the way our mind, or my mind, has developed, I find it difficult to really get it as it is meant. Right? So then for me, I looked into the self-compassion, and for me, that helps much more. All right, Kodo? Good. I see that it is 5 minutes before time. And you want to go to the Vajrasattva practice? Yes. So what if we then do a good dedication to finish this whole module by reading together through the dedication practice at the end of the daily practice? And we leave the meditation on the 4 immeasurables. And yeah, I would say you keep talking with each other, right? When you do other teachings. Is that okay? Good. So let's start at the beginning, Michael, of the dedication. One more up, one more up. Yeah, not one more. To actualize bodhicitta. Yes, there it is. To actualize bodhicitta. So let's read this together. And before we start there, you have to go up a little bit. Yeah. Think about all these 6 weeks that we have been able to come together, and all the work that we have been going through together, all the practices that we have talked about, all the information that we gathered, all the effort that we put in it by being here, by listening, by visualizing. All that has created such a huge amount of merit, and we can visualize all that merit in the form of white light, either in our heart, or you can visualize it above your head, and we're going to dedicate that to all sentient beings, allowing that light to spread out to all sentient beings while we go through the dedication practice. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, and by all the merits of the 3 times collected by numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, may bodhicitta be generated in the hearts of all the sentient beings of the 6 realms, and especially in the hearts of everybody in this world, including all the students, benefactors, and volunteers in the FPMT organization. May it be generated in the hearts of all those who rely upon me, and all those for whom I have promised to pray, and all those whose names have been given to me. May it be generated in my heart and in the hearts of all my family members, those who are living and those who have died. May the bodhicitta that has already been generated increase. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, by the numberless Buddhas and the numberless sentient beings, may all wars, famines, diseases, global problems, and all the dangers of earth, water, fire, and wind be stopped immediately. May perfect peace and happiness prevail in everyone's hearts by generating loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. May the Buddha Dharma, from where sentient beings receive peace and happiness, last a long time and spread in all the directions. and may all sentient beings meet Buddha Dharma and achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. Due to all the past, present, and future happy merits collected by me, by the numberless sentient beings and the numberless Buddhas, may I be able to cherish every single hell being, hungry ghost, animal, human being, asura, sura, and intermediate state being, more than the sky filled with dollars, diamonds, or wish-granting jewels. May I be able to free all of them from the lower realms, samsara, and the lower nirvana, and bring everyone to the peerless happiness of Buddhahood. We do one more. To seal the merits with emptiness. Yeah. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, and the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. All right, thank you so much for being here, for having been here all these weeks. It was a great joy for me to practice this and to remind myself of my practice. Yeah. Please keep doing the practice, even if it is a little bit every day. And I hope to see you again somewhere.